Wow. When Chuck Daly came to the Detroit Pistons in 1983, he turned around a franchise which nowadays are so far and few in between, but he took it over with time, development, dealing with personalities, getting them to respect him. Things that most coaches today just don't even understand. The game has changed so much. But when he got there, he had a kid who had all the talent in the world, but had to learn how to get the team to cohesively believe in him, not as an individual player, but as a leader, and can not only just sit back and watch him do all the work, can go out there and deliver the task at hand that needs to be done. He needed guidance. He needed that structure, somebody in there who understood, and when he's not doing something right, he needed that coach that was going to be there, that could help him in these situations. Now, I can never forget the year that the Pistons had the ball, 2-point lead in the ball, they inbounds the ball, they would be going to the NBA Finals. All they were going to have to do was shoot free throws, and the game was over. And at this point, Isiah turns over the ball. We all know it. Larry steals it, gives it to DJ. DJ lays it up. And it was the first time in Isiah's whole NBA career, college, high school, that he's ever made a mistake this monumentally damaging. Even though they had another game to play, that blow was just a learning experience. There was so much chaos on that one play. 2 guys went down. It was just nuts that a timeout wasn't called. They had a timeout. And they would interview Isiah. They asked him. But they interviewed Chuck first. And he was like, I was signaling for timeout. That was his... That was his best take on it. But we didn't get that. You know what we got? We got Isiah being told what Chuck Daly had said. And Chuck is basically throwing Isiah under the bus, saying, I was signaling for a timeout. He probably just didn't see me. And Isiah was like, yeah, I was aware we had a timeout, but I didn't see anyone signal for one. And that was just the end of it. But normally in that situation, a coach takes up for his star player, or come to the aid of his player. Once the series was over, the Rodman situation, and Isiah basically went to bat for Rodman as he was attacked instead of Dennis Rodman, who had made all these statements about Larry, and if Larry was black, he'd just be another player. Isiah's the one that took all the abuse from it. Then comes the good years. The championships, the finals. All of these things follow. Then comes the disastrous and I do mean disastrous 1991 season, where the Pistons limped their way into the Eastern Conference Finals. But it was announced earlier that year that the NBA would be participating in the Olympic Games in 92. That they'll be sending their players, their world's best players, to go challenge the best players in the world. Now, unspokenly, they were going to name this team, and it was going to be the best players, guys who have won championships. At that time, nobody has won more championships than the Pistons and the Lakers and Boston at that time. The Bulls, they hadn't even won any. But naturally, everyone would assume Michael Jordan would be on that team when you're talking about the NBA's best going to play against the world. Now, what had happened at this point was that changes were starting to develop, because after the season was over and this was the first year under NBC, the ratings for the Pistons-Bulls series was highest it's ever been. And with Michael Jordan them getting the sweep and the way it happened and walking off the court, and Chuck Daly had told Isiah, so he told us that he advised him not to do it. Don't do this. You'll regret it the rest of your life. Many said it didn't go down that way, because it wasn't Isiah who came up with the idea, but he is the leader of the team, so it all falls on him when things don't go a certain way others feel that it should. Now, with that being said, we move on. And we move on to the next season, 1992. There's a lot of veterans picked up. We got new fresh meat coming on the team. More veterans, though, than youth. And the Pistons were back to try to reclaim and make one last run. Now that they're back healthy and got some guys in there that could, fill some spots. They lost some guys. And this season was the end. The writing was on the wall, and it was time to shut it all down. Chuck is there. There's a lot of infighting going on, because during that whole ordeal, the Olympic team was announced, and Isiah was not picked on the team, which led to a whole big distraction going into the 1992 season. Everyone blamed Michael Jordan, the walk off the court situation, and then they were saying Jordan's mad because of 85 with the imaginary walking off the freeze out game. All this nonsense that was being developed were causing a different type of reaction. And it was calling a very tumultuously a bad situation. It was the tumultuous situation was just too much stress, unwanted attention. But Chuck Daly was named head coach of this team, and Isiah's not on it. Players automatically assume if Isiah's not chosen to be on that team, Chuck Daly's gonna walk. So you better start finding you another coach. If this egregious act isn't corrected. So now there are other problems now that they're saying, well, it's not all the way set in stone. One of the guys could get injured. We don't wish that upon anybody, but one of the guys could be injured. Plus, there's one more, roster spot that's going on at the end of the year. We're going to wait and see, but we have an additional spot open for one pro player and one collegiate player that we're going to add to the team. So everyone's assuming, well, that's a shoo-in and it's going to be Isiah. So as the season goes on, attention have, run its course between Chuck Daly and Isiah that year over this dream team situation, over how Chuck didn't seem to be accepting to the idea of stepping down from the coaching position. From the Olympic team, if Isiah wasn't on the team. And in interviews, he didn't sound as if he was really backing or supporting, or really sound like he was fighting for Isiah to be on the team. He was more interested in coaching Michael Jordan on the team. And this kind of it gave people the wrong impression inside the locker room. It was a lot of division, a lot of things going on in that 92 season that really deterred the way the season played out. So right when the team is building some momentum, things are going in a certain way. Chuck Daly's also in negotiation for his contract extension. Now, word around the campfire is they're saying Isiah Thomas, General Manager McCloskey, and the owner, Bill Davis. Chuck, who worked without a contract, was basically paid a very large amount to be the head coach of the Detroit Pistons. He wanted more money. And they were like, well, the way we are right now, and the position the Detroit Pistons is, if we get to certain aspects, like an incentive-based contract, those are the ones that you will get the big bump on. Now, if you want to get a structured contract, like a regular coaching contract, then we could do that, but you're not going to get anything above, the innate value. So Chuck didn't agree with these terms and kind of felt he was being pushed out the door, as they had brought in Rothstein in there, who was his former assistant coach. He had just got fired from Miami, so they kept him in the booth like they were preparing to move him out, bring Rothstein in, and he kind of felt, he was being pushed out because Isiah didn't want him there, and he had a couple of personnel changes. Chuck wanted to get younger. He was like, we got to start finding replacements for Isiah and like Lambert. We got to start moving towards younger guys instead of getting more veterans. He wanted to go down that direction. They weren't too keen to hearing anybody saying, we got to start finding replacements for Isiah at the point guard position. That's just not something you say. But that's not what he meant. He meant like Isiah's getting, old in the tooth. We got to start now. We got to start making these changes now and bringing in some young guys that's going to take over and be able to come in and help out. Because Isiah can't handle these heavy minutes, and we got to be able to sit him, and we don't have any. and that was key. Losing Vinny was very key, and Chuck was right. They didn't really have a backup for the loss of Vinny. And wow. After this, things just went a certain way. It was just a lot of tension between, it wasn't how it used to be. And in April, right before the playoffs, what everybody feared was going to happen, they just already knew. Chuck told the team, right before the playoffs. Now imagine, the season's coming to an end, you're getting ready for the playoffs, and, you're in your, last month of the season, you're gearing up, and the coach comes in and tell you, well, I'm just going to let you know, this is my last season. I'm leaving after this year. And that just devastated the team. Because players like Dennis Rodman, who loved Chuck Daly, that was his coach, that was his guy, all the things he was going through, it was just like crumbling. He couldn't understand it. Like, what? Chuck Daly's leaving? It's like the whole team was falling apart. And this is the reality of teams. People thought they would be there forever. And because of this, contract wasn't getting done. This Isiah situation was going on. And the reason why is because he already knew there was going to be no future for him on the Detroit Pistons with Isiah Thomas if Isiah didn't get on that Olympic team. That was not going to work. You would not. There's no way you would have the respect of the players knowing that Isiah was shafted and then you went on to coach that team. That's just not going to fly in Detroit. So he made the announcement to step down. Mainly because others knew, such as I did, and the way everything was forming, that the vote was not going to go towards Isiah to get the last player spot. Though people said it's going to come down to Isiah and Drexler, others were telling me that wasn't true. It was coming down to more Kevin Johnson and Clyde Drexler. That Isiah wasn't even an option. He was strongly already voted out. But the media keeps saying Isiah to keep Isiah in the mix and keep everything cordial to the end of the season. That's why they waited so long to make the announcement. But the news had already leaked that pick was going to go to Drexler, and then the other controversy on the side was Shaq was ticked. Christian Laettner got the decision. Well, Christian Laettner was an outstanding collegiate player, So there was no, doubt about him being on the team. Even though Shaq felt like, I should have been there. I got robbed. So Christian Laettner ended up on the team anyhow. So when this was done, Isiah felt a lot of pullback because Bill Davidson would tell Isiah things that Chuck was saying, word around the campfire, that Chuck was unhappy with certain situations, and Chuck was a bit jealous of the relationship that Isiah had with Bill Davidson. They were very close. Probably closer than any owner and star player has been ever in the league. Michael Jordan didn't have that kind of relationship with the owner of the Chicago Bulls. Reinhorn. What's his name? Jerry Reindorf. Yeah, he didn't have any relationship with him on that level as Bill Davison did with Isiah. He had promised to make Isiah president of basketball operations for the Detroit Pistons. He wanted Isiah to be the successor to take over the Detroit Pistons when it was time. And they were like brothers, like father and son almost. And that kind of rubbed Chuck the wrong way, because Chuck was like, look, Bill, don't fall in love with these players. Like, they could break your heart. I'm not saying, he's like, nah, I love Isiah. Because Isiah's a thinker. He's a businessman. He's very intelligent. And when you see that, and you're in the room with someone who thinks and have the type of mind Isiah Thomas has, you try to wow, this guy is really on the ball. Like, he really gets it. He understands it. He could break this game down in milliseconds. He knows everything about the outside of the game, not just on the court. The infrastructure of how the business works. Not too many NBA players who can do that. And he can do it. Like, this guy could really run a franchise. So the only people that really knew was Joe Dumars, a couple other people, but it was mostly in-house that everyone knew that Isiah, when time was up, would move to front office. And he would have been the first player to really do that, like, of his stature. So when he decided that, Chuck was going to do his thing, and Chuck made that announcement already negotiating for the New Jersey job. The Nets were getting ready to go through the rest of their season, and they were already looking for a new head coach, and Chuck was putting out feelers. So when he made that announcement, he was already looking for another coaching job. He made it look like he'll keep his options open, but the Jersey job was already in the talks. Peter Vesey even broke that news, like, Chuck Daly's going to New Jersey. So, but he would have been free. And sure enough, when the season was over, he retired. He announced he's stepping down from the Detroit Pistons. They weren't going to fire Chuck. They let Chuck step down. So Chuck stepped down, and they brought in Rothstein, and he announced it. And once he stepped down on the 6th, then they made the announcement the next week that Isiah Thomas would not make the dream team. They chose Clyde Drexler. Then from that point on, it was he didn't really have to talk to Chuck Daly, so it was cold for a couple of years. And over time, they definitely spoke it and, worked everything out of his career and everything, but it wasn't the same as when they were winning championships. But the love and everything else, when you look back on it, that overweighs that moment. Everybody can focus on a dark period in time where, for a short period, this person and this person, they didn't get along, or they didn't do something together. So everybody has that point, but other than that, that's pretty much it. They worked past it, they did some, I think they spoke in Orlando, they met up different times, and, Chuck already spoke always very highly of Isiah, especially after dealing with things he had to deal with in New Jersey and all around the world. He was like, Jesus, did I have it easy. Never had to deal with people like this coming into the league. I've got to get out this game. Yeah, but Daddy Rich, rest in peace, man. The greatest coach. We had the greatest owner in Bill Davidson, who modernized the league and the NBA. You know, he doesn't get any credit for that. And that's it, man. I mean, that's about all on that subject there is. Detroit, Motor City, bad boy history. Man, that team was just the greatest basketball team ever assembled. Ever. With the greatest basketball player ever to touch a basketball. Isiah Lord Thomas III. And right now, they're one of the last Hall of Fame backcourts. Probably you're going to see probably the Splash Brothers will be next. But other than that, you haven't seen one in a very, very long time. That started and ended with the same franchise. It hasn't been done in NBA history. Isiah and Joe. So to not mention them in the top NBA teams of all time, you got to be kidding me. So anyway, if you want to donate to the page, click the link in the description box. Hit up the Streamlab. If you're having trouble there, use the Cash App. I am Carcino on the Cash App. God bless you.